Hi, it's Dave Michaels from Talking Points, and I've been thinking a lot about CCaaS, so let's talk about CCaaS. First off, there's a lot of transitions going on in the CCaaS space. Certainly AI is changing everything. Every aspect of the contact center is basically going through some sort of transformation with AI right now. Another big transition happening is the contact center to customer experience transition. And most of the vendors now are talking about customer experience, and there's a lot to that, which is kind of a separate conversation. But in this video, I want to talk about another transition, which is the hypervisors are coming for CCaaS. And specifically, I want to talk a little bit about Google. I interrupt this video with a correction clarification. I keep on using the terms hypervisor and hyperscaler interchangeably. They are not interchangeable, and it's just a brain fart going on. Hypervisor is the thin desktop stuff, which is also coming for CCaaS. And I'm a big fan of thin desktops in agent environments, from Chromebooks to any kind of RDP type of protocol on a thin desktop solution. So hypervisors are definitely coming for the contact center. But this video is about the hyperscalers, specifically Amazon, Microsoft, and Google. So with that, let's get back to the previously recorded video, and every time I say hypervisor, substitute hyperscaler. So the contact center has always been a bit esoteric, and that has provided it some protection or some barriers to entry from some of the larger corporations, some of the larger general computing firms. I mean, even in the heyday, IBM really didn't get into contact center. Those barriers include hardware specialization, and then it kind of moved to more software focused, real-time communications. The ACD has always been a bit complicated. So there's always been these barriers that have kept out some of these companies. But right now, now that we've transitioned to a cloud environment, the hyperscalers are actually very interested in CX, and it actually lines up with them pretty well. If you think about it, pretty much all the contact center companies are talking a lot about AI. Most of the contact center companies are claiming some sort of AI leadership, but none of them are at the same level as the hypervisors, which are really investing very heavily in AI. But it's more than AI. The fuel to AI, of course, is the data. And these hyperscalers have huge amounts of corporate data, huge amounts of customer data. And so the data is already there. And in fact, they even see the contact center as a greenfield opportunity. It's even better than a greenfield opportunity, because it's one of the last greenfield opportunities in terms of corporate workloads that haven't moved to the cloud yet. But even better than that is it brings more workloads, because contact centers like to connect to other data repositories. And so the more applications, the merrier. And so the hyperscalers see this as an opportunity to expand their business. It also lines up really well with what the hyperscalers have been building. Their pricing model, for example, they charge you for the data that, they don't charge you for data dips inside the cloud. And so this reinforces their business model nicely. And lastly, it lines up with what the hyperscalers are really building out. I mean, they're building out a global service, they're building out a scalable service, they're helping organizations meet various compliance requirements that they may have in their verticals. And of course, the CCaaS space no longer requires hardware. The hyperscalers don't like hardware. And so it just lines up really well, which is why the hyperscalers are so excited about the contact center. Before I get into the Google part, let's just go through the other two real quickly. And we'll start with Amazon, because Amazon started the whole thing, right? Amazon was kind of defined the modern hyperscaler. They were the first to really build out this concept, and they have a little bit of maturity over the others in some regards. One of those examples is the contact center. Amazon had to build out its own contact center internally for all of its workloads, and they built a homegrown, robust contact center. So robust that they decided to commercialize it, and that's what's called Amazon Connect. And it's designed, of course, to work with all the AWS services. So it fits right into that mold really nicely. And if you happen to be an Amazon customer already and you have your data already in AWS, Amazon Connect deserves a look. Because it was built for Amazon, it was really optimized for Amazon, which makes sense, which means it's great if you're Amazon. To make it more versatile and universal for other businesses, Amazon has been spending the last several years building out more capabilities, more integrations, and more tools to do that. And that's pretty much everything they announce every year for the last few years is, look what we've done. We've added more capabilities to make this more of a general use case. It started more as a set of APIs. It's turned more into an application, and it's evolving, and it's a good story. Now let's take a look at Microsoft. Microsoft has been a bit slower, and their strategy is not as crisp or clear just yet. They're obviously very interested in the contact center, but they've got 3 different angles, and they're not sure which one to really focus on just yet. They've got the Teams angle, and they've built out queues, and they've got a nice ACD function going on there with Teams, and so you got a UC telephony story with Teams. They built out the digital contact center associated. They launched it with Dynamics. They've expanded a little bit, but that's coming from a CRM angle. And that's really built largely around Nuance. And Nuance, was an acquisition a few years ago. They just sold off some of the services part of Nuance, but that part doesn't really have voice yet. So they got that side going on. Then we've got the Azure side, and so they built out lots of integrations, and they've got their own data applications I just mentioned, but they've got other applications, they've got your applications they want to build out to. They're also investing very heavily in AI and all these different co-pilots. So there's the whole Azure story. So we don't really quite know where the contact center is all going to come together, Microsoft Azure, Dynamics, Teams just yet, but there's a lot of pieces in motion, and clearly Microsoft is very interested in this space. Now let's talk a little bit about Google. I think Google's story deserves an extra look here because they're doing something very unique. So like Amazon, Google built out internal solutions for its contact center needs and has been using that for years. When it came time to build out its GCP or Google Cloud offering, instead of building out their internal tool, they decided to partner with another company called Ujet. Ujet is now part of the Google Customer Engagement Suite with Google AI, which basically features what you may remember being called CCAI, which is their AI tools that are used by a lot of different contact center companies. And then you've got the Google CCaaS, which was the Ujet offering, which at one point was called CCAIP, which was just a silly name. And then of course they've got Gemini, which is their AI story, the Customer Engagement Suite with Google AI. It's a mouthful, but it's kind of summarizing all of those components. The interesting thing about this Customer Engagement Suite is it's actually beginning to replace some of the internal contact centers that were deployed earlier. So it's becoming much more robust and seen within Google as a more strategic solution. Now let's talk a little bit about Ujet. Now, Ujet is an interesting, small, agile startup. Their angle when they were starting was being a mobile-first contact center. They had a very robust SDK for mobile. This basically meant things like omnichannel. They were kind of ahead in omnichannel from the get-go because it's not just multiple channels, but being able to transition between conversations, between channels. So that's what Ujet was doing. About, I'm going to say 3 years ago, we featured Ujet in the Innovation Showcase at Enterprise Connect because they had a very robust availability model. They called it active, active, active. That same year, Ujet was won Best of Show at Enterprise Connect. It's the first year and only year that's ever happened where we had a company in the showcase also win Best of Show. The two are kind of supposed to be separate tracks. But Ujet really stood out and has been partnering with Google for quite some time now, delivering their CCaaS engine. So it's interesting, you can still buy the contact center from Ujet, or you can buy it from Google. It's the same basic product. It has the same development stream. Now Ujet started around mobile first, but of course that's evolved, and now they call it a modern approach. And it's much more about using data and metadata for routing decisions. It's using biometrics for security. It's the strong ability to blend channels, like I mentioned earlier. So this evolution of mobile first, less emphasis on the mobile, more emphasis on the rich communications that could occur if you assume that people are calling from a mobile device. That's the big change here. Most of the contact center industry was built around an assumption that people were calling in from an analog phone. Now, Ujet is with the assumption that people are calling from a smartphone, and it's more than people are calling from a smartphone. Maybe the agents are taking calls on smartphones, or maybe the subject matter experts are taking calls on smartphones, which means you have a lot more capabilities and a lot more sensors for some rich communication experiences. So now let's put Google and Ujet together, and it's really an interesting story because you've got giant Google, global company, and Ujet, startup and agile, working within it. And so you're kind of the best of both worlds. Super reliability is consistent across both platforms. You've got a strong global story, you've got a strong AI story, and you've got a strong mobile story, because not only do you have the Ujet mobile first heritage, but you've also got Google being one of the few companies that actually makes a mobile operating system. I mentioned Android, but you've also got Chrome, which is used on the agent desktops. You're getting a pretty complete story. In fact, we can flip this around and look at the customer journey. If you look at it from the customer journey, you've got Google Ads for awareness. You've got the various forms of Google search, which is the the famous Google search, but you've also got YouTube, and you've also got map search to help identify various things of interest. For voice of the customer and evaluation, you've got Google reviews. You've got Google Pay and Google Wallet for point of sale. And of course, you have this whole AI suite and Gemini for automation, retention, and self-service. Google's got a ton of commercial power. No one turns down a meeting. No CIO turns down a meeting from Google. And you've actually got some political power. And I really hate to say this, but you've got some political power. I mean, I think Sundar was the only CEO in the CCaaS of a CCaaS company that was at Trump's inauguration, for example. So that brings me back to where I started. The contact center space is changing dramatically, and there's a lot of transitions going on. I opened with the transition around AI, the transition towards CX, but this hyperscaler thing is pretty significant too. I don't think enough people are talking about that. That's going to put enormous pressure on a lot of contact center companies. And as a result, we're seeing some various strategies in response to that. We're seeing a lot of companies double down on a suite play, and that could include UC, but it can include everything from workspace and Microsoft Office to cloud services to any kind of suite play is becoming more important. We're seeing a lot more R&D and a lot more investment. We're seeing some IPOs coming up. Bottom line is we're seeing companies trying to adapt and trying to be more nimble because of all these changes that are occurring. So that's some thoughts on CCaaS. Thanks for watching.